Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode where Ava, as well as the rest of the Legends, found out that Sarah's dead, even though we as the audience know she isn't, which technically she is, because the Sarah that's there is a clone. So obviously, Sarah's kind of dealing with that realization of like, right, seeing that, and that's got to mess with your head a little bit because it's like, right, especially after everything Sarah's been through, Sarah's always managed to come back. But I think that is why she also has the perspective she has to some extent, because she has come back and she has been a different person, which that actually kind of plays interestingly enough into the storyline, but we'll get to that. But, you know, that obviously changed when she discovers, like, oh, he didn't just bring her back as a normal human. She's the Eve of his whole operation. She's already fused with an alien. What she can fully do now, we have no idea, but she has full-blown regeneration now, we see. But it's like, who knows beyond that what else will happen. It's so interesting because obviously, like, we saw the whole situation with Amelia Earhart turn out the way it did, but the difference is that, at least the way Bishop puts it, like, with her mental resilience, that's why Sarah's able to do it. She will be the different catalyst because her mind is fortified because of just everything she's been through, all her training, every battle, every adventure she's ever been has steeled her will and mental fortitude. So it makes her kind of the perfect host. It's interesting because I was like, oh, how did he find out about Sarah? Interestingly enough, he found out about Sarah because of the Rebecca Silver book. So I'm loving that. I still just love that they are still in play. Once again, a couple episodes back in The Flash, you see Caitlin reading one. So it's like, once again, it's nice to know that, like, you know, Mona's still doing her thing with it. I'm wondering, are the books in particular he was reading, I wonder if those ones that, like, Mick had already written, or were they ones that Mona had written? I would assume Mick, because Mick would know the most about it. Because Mona was with them a little bit, but not as long as obviously Mick was, so I guess that's also interesting too for him to be the one that ends up going to save Sarah. I think he's probably written about the other legends, but like Sarah, it seems like Sarah's always been a big focus in those books of like amongst the legends. She's the one, and I guess that's why he kind of like cherishes her and be like, oh, puts her on a pedestal of like, oh yeah, Sarah's great, she's amazing. So, which is actually kind of really sweet because Mick doesn't make it seem like he cares about anyone like that except for his daughter, you know. But obviously he's come to love a lot of the legends like family too, but like Sarah will always have a special place in his heart. He even talks about it later on, which I thought that, well, we'll get to that when we get there. I'm want to kind of be a little more concise with some of this, but at the same time, Sarah's on the planet doing her thing. Speaking of Mick, like Kayla and Mick are doing their thing, and it's just kind of like, oh, he's like, oh, that was great, that was amazing, except for that ear thing. But you want to go again? It's like, maybe we should see if the barrier's up again. It's like, okay, how do we know? We just found out the moment you stepped out the pod, it didn't immediately die. So cool. So she's giving Mick time. It's like, you got until like the third moon sets, because he was like, I'm not leaving without Sarah. She's like, well, I'm not staying. And she looks at Mick and he just kind of gives her, I guess that's his version of the puppy dog eyes. And she's like, fine, you got until the third moon sets. And he's like, deal. So there's that. Another angle to this is the other main part of this episode where we have, you know, once again, the legends all like dealing with the fact it's right, you know, Sarah being gone. So, Nate wants to get Barad so they can all kind of be... No one goes through this together. It's like we kind of mourn together. But Barad's already gone. Basically, he's got his Back to the Future Part 2 plan enacted. So he plans to go back in time and stop Sarah from getting abducted. And obviously, the squad rolls up, which I love Spooner being like, where are we? And they're like, the finale. And she's like, what's that? And they're like, and Nate's like, oh, you know, you love them. They're so fun. I mean, except for the one where I died. Which I was like, I mean, well, technically you've died twice in finales. The first one being like the paradox, which like that version of yourself technically got erased anyway. There's that, but he's more so. I was at first like, which one is he referencing? Right, he died in season 4. I was like, hey, you came back. Granted, things were weird because you came back to like your best bud Barad, but not the version of Zara you were dating at the time. So this timeline kind of has its complications in that regard. I mean, that's also a whole other conversation too, because it's like, because this is post-crisis, what is a timeline? Not what is a timeline, but what timeline are we living in with everything going on? I even love it later on where Bayrod's like practicing. He's like, the fakes are back. He's like, no. Your dad and your sister sent me. He's like, no, are they even alive in this timeline? I'm like, I love the joke. I appreciate it. They should be because of Arrow, because Crisis did already happen. So based on, even though maybe not all of the events in the finale of Arrow have happened, because I still don't know what that John Diggle situation currently is in Gotham, whether we've already, once again, it's like, not everything from the Crisis finale has technically happened, I guess. Or at least it has, and they're just not really acknowledging it in the other shows yet. Whatever the case may be. I've had this conversation over and over again when discussing the Flash as well as even Superman and Lois. Side notes and all that aside. So, I think it's so fascinating, though. It's like, right. I love that this show can do that. Like, it will be the most self-aware, self-referential show out there, and I love it. Like, they constantly make jokes about that. They're like, oh yeah, this is the finale and everything like that. I even love it later on. They refer to it as, oh no. They were like, oh, what are you guys doing? I was like, oh, we were just recapping the finale. I love that. Well, we'll get to this soon enough, but they didn't come here to stop Behrad. They actually came here to help Behrad to make sure he does it right. Which, they've done this. They tried to avoid doing it, but there have been moments over the course of the series where they have kind of changed things up. Obviously the whole thing is to try and keep the timeline as similar to what it was as possible. But obviously that's gotten wonky in many different regards. Crisis really wonked that up, especially because Oliver changed quite a bit. Obviously putting a lot of stuff on the same Earth, but also making sure that some of the stuff that made him into who he became, made sure some of that stayed, and while other stuff didn't, some of the stuff, changing some of the stuff that wouldn't affect too much of who he already was. So there's that whole thing. So, obviously, like, it's like, all right, we got to find out a way to get to Sarah. This is like the one spot in like this part of town like we didn't go to that night, but no one actually remembers what they were doing because everyone's pretty out there, but blurred out. Even Nate, it's like, right, I just lost I had to say goodbye to like the love of my life, so and it's like, oh, like everyone's kind of looking like, oh, right, that's still kind of a stinger. Like, I love that it's like, oh, like Nate's fine with it and everything, but it's like every once in a while when he brings up, you're like, yeah, that is still a little, yeah, he recognizes this is Zari and her and Constantine, that's fine and everything, but it's still kind of like it's still gonna sing, it's still gonna be there, like, I mean, he's had to say goodbye to his like 2 different girlfriends exactly like that. He had to say that, it's just a sad nature of his story. But the conversation then becomes like, well, if he ends up stopping Sarah from being adopted, that means everything ends up changing. No aliens get blown into the timeline. That also means that Spooner never joins the Legends, which is like, oh, that's cool. And I mean, you guys are great and everything, but it's kind of fine with my life being the way it is. Like the craziness, that is this, I could avoid all that. So, but Behrad's plan is like, right, I'm gonna replace the present day me because he's up. Like, I smoke every time at midnight, so it's like, right, I just replace me, and he runs into Sarah. And she's like, oh, I'm going to propose. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. It's like, oh, you should get back to the ship. There's like some time quakes thing. But she's like, no, I'm not going anywhere until I propose to Ava and everything. So it's like, okay. So that fell through, which I love. I wonder why is it that bit the entire episode where Nate's just like eating bowl after bowl. I don't know if that's like curry or something, but I'm like, why you eat? Why is it also every time we cut back, you're literally the only one eating? I mean, I guess it's also like they're technically in the grieving process, and so like people grieve, obviously, as Nate said earlier in the episode, different ways. And I guess it's like, right, nervous about the plan, but also like you were in a grieving process, so you probably worked up part of an appetite. I don't know if that's how that's justified or whatever, but it's like, right, we can't let Ava know what's what. Obviously, our Ava's grieving, so we got to leave her alone. Can't let her know, but we also can't let present day Ava know because she'll try and stop us as well. So Constantine and Zari decide like, no, we're going to do it. Well, first and foremost, I love the whole, like, Ava is someone who does notice little things, because it's like, whoa, Behrad, wasn't your silver streak like the other way? And he's like, he flips it, and she's like, oh, okay, cool. And it's like, oh, like, you're not coming with us? She's like, oh, yeah, smoke time. And it's like, they're like, oh, okay. It's just like, they could definitely tell something was up. I think they actually technically used that excuse twice about recapping everything, because, Behrad and Ava, it's like, oh yeah, Behrad and Sarah, it's like, oh no, we were recapping stuff about the finale and stuff, like everything what we're dealing with. So, but John and Zari go and find Sarah because Sarah wants to propose in her own time, and I thought it was actually kind of fascinating when we actually found out the reason why she's reluctant to pop the question. Like, obviously it was John pushing for it, but like, no, come on, you go ahead and you go in there and you put a ring on it. And it's like, what? She's like, why are you so eager for me? It's like, what's up with you? And he's like, oh, I just love love. It's like, John Constantine just loves love. It's like, whatever, I'm going to propose in my own time. And it's just like, Zari's like, what's up with you? He's like, what? She's like, the fact is you're pushing Sarah so hard, you don't have your magic. I was like, wow, Zari jumped to that quick. I mean, she already had her suspicions. It's like, right. What about the whole Astra covered for me? So it's like, right, you're not just helping Sarah out of the goodness of your heart. It's like, yes, I care about her, yes, but it's going to, John does what he does too. He also does stuff that will benefit him as well. And it's like, right, by doing this, maybe if we stop all this from happening, I don't end up losing my magic. She's like, all right, fine, but no more lies. And he does the whole like crossing his heart and everything. And she's like, and he punches him like, no words. And he's like, right, no more lies. And she's like, good, so. But so that didn't work out either. And then you had Ava see two Zaris and Constantines, and she confronts them, and it's like, oh no, just recapping the finale. It's like, Shake Weight and Cisco. Am I right? Well, I'm like, and it's like, she's like, don't play with me. I know you're from a different timeline. She's like, I don't know why you guys are here. You must want to try and change something, but no, we need to preserve the timeline. She's like, oh, wait, the fact is I'm not here must mean that I don't like what you're doing. Wait, am I dead? And it's like, she's like, no, never mind. I don't need to know. I don't want to know because that's going to change things by knowing. It's like, wait, did you just nod your head? And Nate had to shake his head like, no. She's like, no, what? And he just grabs everybody's beers like, go back to your original time. And they're like, what? So that's going to involve you taking our beer? She's like, I need to get so blackout drunk I don't remember it. You guys are doing this to me. So, obviously, I love that. It's like everyone's looking like they're kind of down. It's like, oh, are you guys going to miss me that much? Oh, I guess this has nothing to do with me. So, but then Bayrod has his own, like, backup plan. It's like, right, we're going to put, like, all the bombs in this mannequin. And so that so that basically Ava was right because ripple effects. Like, saving Sarah is one thing, but we don't know how the rest of this is going to ripple out if we don't do something. So, Bayrod's plan is to stuff a whole bunch of like fireworks and stuff like that inside of the mannequin, so like aliens bust out into the timeline again, but obviously Sarah is still saved, because it's saying like, oh, it's Gary that's kidnapping Sarah, so he probably won't know the difference or whatever. So, which everyone else is still like, I don't know, man, this seems like kind of the crazy plan, but it's kind of like, because Evan's already like, I normally back up your craziness like 100%, but I'm not sure about this, Bayrod. But it's just because he's so desperate to save Sarah, So, at the same time, Spooner's meant to keep an eye on Sarah. He's like, yeah, don't interact with Sarah. And lo and behold, I like that, like, everyone kind of, like, in this moment, like, even Spooner, who's meeting Sarah for the first time, gets to have a nice, intimate moment. And we get to find out why Sarah's so reluctant to pop the question. Because for her, over the course of her life, what we've come to know is Sarah, like, she's been so many different people. From technically who she was in season 1 of Arrow to when she returns in season 2, like her coming back from the dead, becoming the, being a part of the Legends, becoming a captain, and just like how she's molded over the course of this. She's been a very different person, found true love and everything. So it's like she's scared, like, yeah, I'm gonna forever be with the woman that I love, but Ava can't necessarily say the same thing. Like, what if I'm a different person because of that, Because at the same time, she was helping Spooner because Spooner was like, yeah, I was abducted by aliens. It's just like, oh, you probably think I'm crazy because I'm worried about hurting people I'm with. But then it's like, Sarah's like, nah, I'm not, people are only, scared, like, or they only act like that when they're afraid. And she's like, me, I'm more intrigued. And it's like, that once again just shows you, man, that's our Captain Lance. Being like, nah, don't worry about it. The fact of the matter is, something she's like, I've learned in my life as well. It's like, don't ever go anything alone. These people, they're there for you. Like, let them have your back. But she's like, what if I hurt them? It's like, what if they help you? Kind of, and it's like, wow. It's like, you, even with Spooner being like, wow, you are amazing. It's like, it's pretty dope. But she was able to turn that back on Sarah. It's like, because it's like, what if I, hurt her? And it's like, what if you help her? And, and I love that. I love they had an intimate moment like that. It's pretty dope. And I think Spooner's like, yeah, Sarah Lance is pretty dope. I think when she actually gets to meet Sarah, I think that's a big, like, oh my God, yeah, well, she got to meet Sarah, so, but still present day and knowing everything, So, obviously, Bayrod tries to get to Sarah beforehand and try and warn her. He's like, no, I got to do whatever I can to save her. But by the time he gets there, she still gets abducted. because prior to that, you had Nate having to go to the bathroom, and then a version of him is like, oh, I'm from a different timeline, doing his best Kurt Russell. What is it? Battle for, is it L.A., New York? I don't remember, but it's like, yeah, he's doing his best Kurt Russell, and it's like, why are you dressed like me? I even love Zari being like, whoa, wait, because I think like the grizzled look and the coat's like, oh wait, this actually is a nice look on Nate, which I thought was so interesting that like no one else really picked up on that, but she was like, oh no, it's like, oh yeah, that's good on you. And for him, he talks about the fact that the plan doesn't go well, and basically the aliens end up in the Gilded Age of New York, and they take over Wall Street. It's like, John, you died, and it's like, oh, but what about Sarah? He's like, what about her? He's like, it was a mannequin, B. He's like, I'm sorry, she's gone. But Bayrod's like, no, I refuse to give up, and he runs, and Nate's like, no, and he disappears, and out comes this present Nate being like, huh, what did I miss? Oh, that toilet paper, could have used that like a minute ago. So what did I miss? Everything, apparently. But sadly, Sarah still ended up getting abducted. But present day Sarah, like, at that point was like, she remembered that. She's like, those idiots are trying to save me. I need to get back before they kind of screw up the timeline. Because luckily, Gary meets up with Mick, and they meet up with Sarah, and it's like, yeah, we're all on the same side. I'm like, yeah, she's so happy. She's like, thanks for coming and finding me, Mick. And it's like, yeah. So it's like, right, we got to plant these charges, but before they blow the place up, she wants to go after Bishop, because she needs to stop him, because his ultimate plan is he wants to make a whole army of Sarah clones with her kind of at the helm of it. It's like, oh, you're Sarah 2.0, you'll kind of lead the charge. And basically, it's like intergalactic domination. It's like, but we're doing it for, it's like, it sounds more just invasion-y rather than just like, oh, we're saving humanity. It's like, you're going to try and take over multiple planets across the intergalactic invasion, okay? But obviously for Sarah, it's like, no, I'm not going to work with you. But he's like, oh, I'm going to get rid of you and make another Sarah. But it's like, no matter what Sarah you print, you would have to change a lot of who she was. But maybe he'd be reluctant to do that, because it's like, if I change too much of you, you won't be the person I need you to be to lead my army. But also, it's like, there's always a chance. Next Sarah, he had the opportunity, he probably would have tinkered with her mind a little bit to make her more subservient like the Avas. But he also needs her personality, like I said, intact to kind of do what he needs done. But obviously, Sarah planned on making another copy of herself. It's like, if I can clone myself again, I can make a normal version of myself. And it was even sad. She was even saying like, this version of me can stay here. That would have been a sad existence. But I mean, I guess it's like, right, I guess I could have just kicked it with all these Avas. It'd be sad because it's like, right, you'd be sending another Sarah out there to live the life that you can never live again. That would have actually been super sad. I wonder what would she have done? Would she have just like actually just stayed there and lived, or would she actually have destroyed herself? I don't know. I mean, we never find out the answer to that, but it is kind of once again, a very existential thing of like, right, that's another version of me. It's still me living my life, so I'm happy about that. It's a little robot-esque in Invincible. I like to make comparisons to stuff that's just kind of in my head. Without spoiling it, it kind of reminds me a little of, I feel like it could have easily turned into a robot situation. I'll just leave it at that. I think we could have definitely seen that being a possibility, which once again, considering like the Molar twins and everything, could have presented, it presents the whole thing of like, right, it could get a little existential, and it could kind of drive you a little nuts about like, oh, who's the original, who's the clone, can't really let anyone know because it becomes too much, so both have to have kind of a sync consciousness of believing they're the original, because, otherwise, it's a whole thing, Sarah is trying to make her clone, but sadly Mick comes and kills Bishop after Sarah made sure to trap him in his own body, because trying to make sure he never jumps to another clone, like, yeah, this will be your last and only body. So in that moment, Mick accidentally kills him. He uploads his consciousness is right. So now I can literally make a clone of myself across the universe. So it's like, right, if I don't stop this clone of me, if I don't blow this place up immediately, like, the clone of me will be made, but also like he's going to be uploaded everywhere, so I need to stop his plan. So Mick comes and she's like, Mick, I died. And he's like, again, which is like, that's the natural response. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't make it back this time. So it's like, this is a monster version of me, I need you to take this other version of me. But it's like, no, we got to stop the bad guy. But he's like, yes, he needs to be stopped, but also I can't, like, what if I come back and I hurt you guys? But and she's like, I'm a monster. And Mick, it's like, no matter what, all I see in front of me is Sarah Lance, Captain Sarah. You're Sarah, my oldest friend. I see the woman who's gone through hell so many times, but obviously has come out the side stronger every time. So it's like, for him, it's like, I'm not worried. Like, that no matter how much you've been through, you've always managed to stay who you are, you know? Which kind of goes along with some of those concerns she had with Ava, but I think because of the timeline difference in her conversation with Spooner, I think that had an influence as well. So it's like, all right, let's get out of here, and they blow it up. And obviously, Ava, when nurse Ava was like, "No, I'll stay behind." It's like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yeah, this is my home after all, but we are like medics and trained soldiers and professional chefs, so we'll be able to take care of ourselves." So I'm like, "Aw." You know, but it's like, oh, Planet Ava's out there, so that's pretty dope. I even look. That was even Gary's whole point. Whoa, like a planet or an army of like Sarah and Ava's. Are we sure we want to stop this? Oh, I love you so much, Gary. And so they're making their way through. It's like, nah, Kayla, and I love Mick being like, Kayla would never leave without me. It's like, I mean, you spent some time with her. You guys have shagged, but you really think like, okay. I think Mick's like, she sprung. You know, so I guess that's his thought process. But it's like, oh, the ship is gone, and they're running for it, but she came back blasting and saved him. So it's like, oh, that's pretty dope. I also love, like, when Mick and Sarah get attacked at the same time. It's like she's kind of deciding who to help. She morphs, knocks back all the creatures, and actually saves Mick in the end, which is pretty dope. Sadly, she gets overrun and taken. So they're going to go wait on the ship because Mick doesn't want to leave her. She didn't leave without them, so he didn't want to, like, he actually cares for her. But it's like, right, we have to wait. We have to go ahead and leave without her. So that begs the question, like, are we going to see villain Kayla rise up at the end of this? Because it's like, oh, you guys left me behind. I thought there was something there. Or is she kicking it on Ava's plan? That could also be a storyline, too, of, like, Mick being like, you know what? I got to find my love, Kayla. I'm going to go out there, search the stars. That might be where his story ends up taking him, you know, in the future. So I'm curious about that. Or, like I said, it could just be Kayla ends up becoming the villain. It seems like Bishop's dead, but I always feel like there's got to be some contingency. His mind didn't upload all the way, but I'm wondering, did it upload enough that it's like, right, he can still be copied somewhere else? Like, his data was still out there enough. Maybe Kayla will end up being so pissed and wanting revenge that she ultimately... It's interesting because Kayla and Gary didn't have much interaction. So, like, all right, they're supposed to be engaged in everything. That conversation didn't come up. Sadly, they didn't have enough time with everything going on. But it was almost like Gary being like, no, it's okay. It's understandable. Like, you had faith in her, but it's like, I know Kayla. She was going to abandon us and everything. Ultimately, they make their way back home. So, like I said, I'm curious what's going to happen with that Kayla thing, but... we'll see whether she'll rise up as a villain and the whole Bishop thing and that ends up working together like she wants revenge. We'll see. Or maybe she just leads the Ava clones and that kind of becomes her pal/army. I don't know. But present day, obviously, Behrad beating himself up and like, right, this is my fault. And then it's like, right. And then like you have... Astro kind of be like, yeah, you're right. It is completely your fault. He's like, you have a very like interesting like way of comforting, and obviously for her, it's like comfort doesn't come natural. Consider where she grew up, but obviously she knows more so than anyone what it's like to like want to change things, and it's like he's like, right, your mom, like, you ever think about it? And it's like all the time, but it's like I might have had some bad stuff along the way, but if it wasn't for all the good and the bad, I wouldn't be here right now. And obviously Behrad's like, and that's good. And I'm like, huh. Once again, I'm not sure which way that's going to lean. I'm like, oh, is it going to be like a Spooner and Behrad thing? Or is it maybe like an Astra and Behrad thing? I don't know. You're just like, you're trying to ship people together. And I'm like, I don't know. I could see that. I could definitely see either couple being a thing. I don't know. I'm curious. I'd be so curious to see if that's what they're setting up potentially. It could just be like, nah, Behrad's like the one that's like, right. He kind of, you know, everyone kind of helps balance everyone out in some shape or form. And obviously, like, you know, and obviously even John comes over and he's like, I understand what you're going through, mate. He's like, I had to learn the hard way, you know. It's like, there's just some things in time that can't change. Like, obviously he knows better than anyone. He spent the whole episode trying to make sure that his, try to break, in things with his boyfriend at the time to make sure, like, you don't ultimately end up getting possessed because of my actions. But it's like, things always end up playing out a certain way, you know. There's just kind of some fixed points in time to a certain extent, and maybe even Sarah being abducted was a fixed point because it's a necessary part of her journey. I mean, maybe becoming who she is now, which she hasn't brought that up, but I think for her it's like she's trying to focus on, now I'm going to get back to the people I love and care about. I'm trying to get back to my girlfriend so I can propose to her. Sadly for Ava, like, her file got corrupted, I guess just because the timeline changes messed with it, because I was about to say I thought she would see like Spooner in the back. It's like, wait, what's going on? But obviously Sarah's there. I even love Gary being like, oh, I'll go check on Ava. I'm sure she's going to want to see me. And Mick's like, no, she's not. And so it's like, right, where's the team? It's like, they're all drinking. It's like, oh, we got to tell, the legend that is Sarah Lance. And she's like, hey, guys. And everybody's reunited. It's like, yeah, it's so awesome. I love it. And it's like, oh, Gary, the alien abductor. It's like, he's like, no, I didn't abduct her. It's like, no, actually, Gary saved me. And I love, it's like, yeah, Mick may have landed on a planet, but it was definitely my planet saved you, right? And Sarah's like, yeah, sure thing, B. Yeah, it was totally you. He's like, yeah, I love it. It's so good. It's like, it's actually, obviously there's a lot to this they don't really cover because it's the last few minutes of the episode, but it's just a nice happy ending of like, the legends are reunited. Everyone here, this whole squad is here, so they're celebrating. And then you have like, noticing that like Sarah's like, wow, the Constantine and Zari thing that developed, that became a serious thing. But also it's like, right, he's like, even if I don't have my magic, I still have you. And she's like, yeah, you do, but you're still gonna try and get your magic back. He's like, yep, I'm gonna turn, no matter what happens. It's like, oh yeah, but luckily you have a superhero girlfriend to help you out, which I'm like, oh, that's super dope and super cute. But Ava and Sarah's like, you know what? She's ready to propose, get down on the, oh my god, and I love it. And it's like, Ava, and she's like, yes. It's like, you haven't even let me finish it. She's like, I'm sorry, you're right, let you finish. And it's like, it's just a sweet proposal, and just Ava standing there, and she's like, this is where you say yes. She's like, yes, baby. And it's like, oh. And it's like, oh, Nate's like, also, Behrad, you did take those fireworks out of that mannequin, right? And they explode, so it's very befitting, and it's just like a very nice way to end off the episode. Granted, like I said, there's a lot of still heaviness afterwards because, there's still like a lot of stuff unresolved because we still don't know the full scope of Spooner's thing, which you would assume at some point Spooner's going to realize Sarah's situation because of her powers and everything to kind of sense aliens and stuff like that. So she's probably going to be the first one to figure it out. Well, obviously Mick knows, but even Gary doesn't know. Which I think Gary could potentially help, considering the fact is that he is an alien himself. He could probably help Sarah kind of adjust to that. Maybe that'll be something we see. But then maybe that's the justification. And like, no, Gary's an alien, so that's probably what you're sensing. So Sarah's probably going to be super reluctant, not only to tell everyone, hey, the real Sarah Lance is dead, and I'm a clone. It would get a little existential, because it's like, right, are you really even the same Sarah? But it's like, right, Ava's a clone, and they don't judge her for that. It's like, oh, right, there's also a planet of Ava's out there, too. I also met, like, the dude that kind of created all Ava clones, so that's going to be an interesting conversation if they decide to go down that route, too. But I don't think Sarah's going to talk too much of that. I think, Mick's going to keep his mouth quiet about it, and so is Sarah. We'll see how everything ends up playing out. But for now, we get to just enjoy the happiness of everything. So I'm really excited to see ultimately where everything ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.